Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel for this Real Talk series. Today I want to talk about love versus lust. Starting off with love, it's a word that we kind of like throw around today, and I feel like it's lost a lot of its meaning and like flair. We say like, oh, I love food, or I love, my dog, I love my family, I love doing this sport, and a lot of what love actually meant, the definition of that has kind of changed over the years. For me, like I remember this was a couple years ago. I was in a relationship, and somehow I got on the topic talking with her. I was like, I want to know what love is, what it actually means, what it looks like. And I just kind of, after that talk, I went and kind of pursued for like a week or two, just reading through the Bible and through different verses that talk about love and what it is, what it looks like, and or what it should look like, I should say, and just kind of exploring it. And so this is kind of like just explaining what I found, and as I've continued to grow and learn and experience, and how that's kind of changed. But I mean, I wanted to throw in lust as well and show like the difference between love and lust, because that is something I think we have a pretty good concept of what lust is, but I think love gets kind of blurred, like those lines. I want to kind of clarify that as much as I can and simplify it in a short time here. So, just starting, I wanted to start with like a definition which I pulled off of dictionary.com. So, for love, it says to have a profoundly tender, passionate affection for. I just thought that that really fit the like what love is and what I'm kind of going for here. And a verse that I found that really kind of describes that and what it is and looks like, I found was John 15:13, and this is in the ISV version. And it says, no one shows greater love than when he lays down his life for his friends. And we see here that love is talked about as a verb. It's something that's done. It's a choice, and I'll get more into that in a minute. On the flip, or well, I guess love can be, at least in my experience and from what I've read, there's kind of like three types of love. There's like the romantic relationship, significant other kind of love, and then there's the family, friends. You know, I know in the Greek there's like the agape, phileo, and eros, which you can get into that like, in your own personal exploration. On the flip side, we have lust, which the dictionary.com refers to that as to have a yearning or desire, have a strong or excessive craving. I felt like that was very fitting. One really good example of describing what lust is and what it looks like in the Bible that I found was Exodus 20, verse 17, which again, I'm going to be using the ISV, which is the part of the Ten Commandments that you shall not desire your neighbor's house, nor your neighbor's wife, his male or female servant, his ox, his donkey, nor anything else that pertains to your neighbor. And I think that that's a good example, a very clear example of lust itself. It's basically just coveting what you don't have, desiring things that aren't yours, and that is usually either resulting in some fleshly form or some like material form. And we always think of it, lust is like sexual, and that's not always the case. It can be money, it can be cars, it can be a bunch of different things. It could be even gifts and abilities and talents that other people have that you're just desiring to have. However, that's not always the case or common when we think of that term, at least. So I have kind of like a graph here that I found and I've added to myself, and this kind of like back and forth, like for love and lust. So, like, love is a commitment, and lust is a feeling. Love is God focused and other focused. Lust is self centered. Love is decision. It's a decision to love. You choose to love. Lust is a desire. Love gives, it surrenders, it's death to yourself. And lust is only to get something. And lastly, love is focus on God. Like it's drawing you to God. You can't truly love, like at least how I've found in my experience, I can't love somebody until I love God. Like loving someone is very hard without loving God. But on the flip side, lust it is your focus is on yourself. It's on, stuff, on things. So, Bible verses again that I found that really kind of help build on this idea is of love. I'm going to start with the typical, wedding verse that everyone uses just about, which is the First Corinthians 13, 4 through 7, and this is ESV, which is love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. Does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. And another verse, Romans 13:10, love does no wrong to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfilling of the law. And I know throughout the Gospels that Jesus spoke, and I can't remember exactly who came to him, but they're like, well, what is the greatest law, the greatest commandment? And Jesus said, love God with all your heart, with all your mind, and all your soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. And that sums up pretty much everything that love is. If you're loving God and you love your neighbor, you love your family, you love the people around you, and you're caring for them, like I was saying and describing like different things that love is versus lust. Love is all about doing, giving, surrendering. And, if you love the people around you, you're not doing harm to them, you're not hurting them, you're not trying to take from them. It's totally focused on what's best for them or doing good to them or for them versus like what can I get from them or what can I do to better myself? How can I, exalt myself above them or get what they have or whatever the case may be. Lust, some verses for that kind of clarify it a little bit more. James chapter 1, 14 through 15, and this is MEV. But each man is tempted when he is drawn away by his own lust and enticed. Then when lust has conceived, it brings forth sin, and when sin is finished, it brings forth death. And that's a pretty harsh reality there, but it paints a very vivid picture of lust and how it kind of ties into the sin. And another one, First Peter 2:11, and this is ESV. Beloved, I urge you as sojourners and exiles to abstain from the passions of the flesh, which wage war against your soul. And I think that one's really powerful and paints a very vivid picture again because of the war that it wages against your soul. Like that is very key right there, especially when you come into like a relationship with Christ and you have the Holy Spirit dwelling in you and leading, guiding you and directing your paths and stuff. You find that your old ways, old habits, and those things that aren't godly, when they come into your mind or whatever the case may be, you experience something, you see something that would trigger you or draw you into some form of a sin or lust or whatever. it's waging war because, as you pursue a relationship with Christ, you want to be more like him, and the more time you spend with him, the more you start to resemble him, I guess would be the way to put it. But, there's this human nature, this fleshly nature that's like, I want this, I need that. And they're total polar opposites of each other. And it does wage a war that we have to ultimately fight and choose, and that's the whole point. To love or to lust is, totally our choice. It's up to us to choose one or the other, and ultimately that's you have to choose one or the other. You're either going to choose to do, follow your flesh and your lust and, your own way or whatever, or you're going to choose to go God's way and pursue what he has for you and the good things and the better things. And I mean, obviously, the biggest areas when we talk about this love and lust is, that happens with sex, with porn, masturbation. Like, those are all huge areas that are always like thought of when these topics are kind of brought up, especially lust. And I want to kind of speak, I guess, on like sex itself. Like, it isn't bad. It's God given, God, commanded, Adam and Eve, to repopulate or populate the earth, be fruitful and multiply, and back in Genesis. But sex, if you're looking at it in the form of lust, is like, outside of the context of marriage usually. And it's what can I get from this person versus love in the context of marriage is like that's the ultimate form of love in that context because it's, being fully vulnerable and open and surrendering yourself to another person, your spouse. Listen, it's very, polar opposite is, what can I get versus I'm totally surrendering. And it's the same act, but it's done in completely separate ways. And one's, gonna continue to affirm and build on that relationship, and the other one is just destroying. And you're every time, you're following that lust, you're not only harming yourself, you're harming the other person. There's things called like soul ties, and you're surrendering, bits of yourself that you can't get back. And there is grace in that, and people, God can forgive you, and you can be restored to a sense, but you can never get back what you've given away. And it's the same thing with porn and masturbation. Like those things are so self-centered, so self-focused, and you're taken away from yourself, and you're taken away from your future spouse. And I'm not saying this in a way like condemning guys specifically, because I know it is generally a more predominant thing in the male culture, especially here in America, where, porn is everywhere. You can pull it up on your phone, anywhere, anytime, you know, and there's tons of apps and, different ways to get around that. And I know things like Covenant Eyes and, some other apps, and, there's groups and all that stuff that help with that. And I am all for that stuff and encourage you if that's something that you struggle with to pursue something like that. And, finding a group of, other believers that can help you through that, and, you can keep each other accountable. Like, that's a huge thing and a huge strength. And I've seen a lot of people achieve success and freedom from those types of sins and forms of lust. But I mean, this also falls, like we were reading in Exodus there, it's not just involving sex or sexual acts, but, it's coveting your neighbor's possessions, their car, their house, their dog, their, family, whatever, their job title, it can be a ton of different things. It's such a wide thing, but we always kind of just narrow it down to like specifically sex. I hope that that kind of like clears up a little bit of what lust is and what love is, what it looks like. I know that it's a pretty heavy topic and probably could be here for quite a while discussing that, and maybe I'll make another video on it. Um, Maybe going further in depth with something, another topic that was kind of discussed in this. If that's something that you guys would like to see or like to hear more of, like please by all means comment on this video or wherever you're seeing it, whether it's social media or here on YouTube or whatever. I would love to hear some feedback and some comments and things that you would like to be discussed further or you think were great or whatever the case may be. I'd love to kind of you know hear this kind of stuff towards what people want to hear and want to know. But I want to like end this short video with 1 John chapter 2 verse 16 and 17, and this is ESV. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh and the desires of the eyes, the pride of life, is not from the Father, but is from the world, and the world is passing away along with its desires. But whoever does the will of God abides forever. Now, I wanted to end with that because it's key, especially as a Christian, that we are putting our focus on God and on His kingdom and not on our life and our situations and our problems. Like, yes, we have to deal with them, we have to live with them, we have to go through them. But ultimately, if our focus is just on the here and now, like we're missing a huge part of God's kingdom. Like, yes, we need to live here and now, but God, it says God abides forever, and those who do His will abide with Him, and we need to be centered around that idea and around being pleasing to God. And that leads to healthier things. Like God doesn't give us the 10 commandments or anything. People, you know, they look at that and say, "Oh, that's so legalistic and why do I need to follow all of that?" And yeah, it can come across as that as these set of rules that you have to follow and no one can follow it perfectly. It can't be done in our human nature and especially without the assistance of God. But it shows us what holiness looks like and what righteousness looks like and what God's kingdom that's coming is going to look like. And so I hope that this helps. I'm not here and doing this to condemn anybody or anything like that. I hope that this is encouraging and that it's insightful and that you just get something out of it. And like I said, I'd love to hear any feedback or comments you have and ideas for future topics would be awesome too. I just pray that wherever you are, wherever you're hearing this from, and whatever you're going through, that you just feel God's presence, His touch, and that He's able to encourage you. And if you don't have a relationship with Him, that hopefully this helps you to find that and to seek Him, because ultimately that's what I'm doing this for. It's not for money. It's not for fame or fortune or to be whatever, but to just share the love of God and to share the truth in His Word. So I hope that this blessed you, and I'll catch you guys later.